Hello there, Life Sim Survival friends! I hope you are doing well today and thank you for clicking. Along with this farming and crafting simulator kick we've been doing on the YouTube channel lately comes this little gem from the Steam store called Arctico. Originally titled Eternal Winter and primarily focused on survival and exploration aspects, this new rendition allows one to get a little more mileage out of the game with crafting and base building. Our vehicle in this game is a sled with dog power. And what's quite a unique feature of this game that allows to keep with our channel theme? Track building. Yep, that's right. There's an ability to forge a track with boosters and all, but it's going to take a considerable amount of time to collect the materials and plus process those for such a project, so you'll have to look for that one in the future. For now, I'll just do a quick rundown and an introduction on the game's features. We're starting out with just a tiny bit of character creation in this game. You do get to name your dogs though, kind of like your party members back in Yukon Trail. I think I'm gonna have to go with some car related names here. Oh yeah, what's this? From ARC. Dear Miss Maserati, we are very sorry about your mentor's passing. Dr. Garcia was an exceptional scientist and inventor. Her accomplishments have influenced the whole world. She left very clear instructions stating that if anything happened to her, you would be the only one capable to continue her work. As you know, Dr. Garcia's mission was a broad effort to improve many aspects of our lives, from clean energy production to farming massive amounts of crops in the sub-zero conditions of the island. She chose Arctico because it was a terrain filled with research and experimentation opportunities. We know how massively important your mentor's work was, and we also know how important this expedition is. Our only chance of recovering Dr. Garcia's work, most of her blueprints and research still remain on the island. You must find them all in order to continue your mentor's invaluable projects. Well, geez, I'm guessing I'm ready as I'm ever gonna be. You'll find yourself immediately outside your small cozy base camp in the Arctico. The friendly doges are ready to go, but it's fun to explore around and best to first get your solar panels constructed. In this game, energy is a regularly rolling resource that's necessary for collecting materials and crafting them into buildable objects. Thankfully, the solar panels aren't the only means, but eventually blueprints collected from exploration will unlock advancements like wind turbines that collect overnight, and I spy in the future some nuclear power. Perhaps by then, track building won't seem so impossible. The first thing you'll be asked to do is turn ore collected from laser drilling through the ice into hardware, which is now the general fodder craft item that's in most of the recipes in your handy-dandy ancient-looking PDA. I'm dating myself back here a bit because it reminds me of the Palm. It's got your inventory, recipe crafting guide, and a current count on blueprints in addition to your map. Not only will it give you a general idea of your surroundings, you can also set points to where an arrow will guide you directly to the selected area by pressing Q while you're on your dog sled. You also have a compass as well as a handy-dandy monocular device to see far off in the distance. These, along with the drill that unearths, or rather unices, most materials in the game that you'll need to collect are found in the scroll wheel menu. There are several items enclosed in the starter lab, including beds, a stove, water tank, hardware processor, and a computer terminal through which you can sell fish or data and buy excess hardware. The bed is used to extend into the next game day and acts as the save function for the game, so don't forget to sleep before logging out. The stove will help you process the very limited menu for the game, which is basic bread, mushroom soup, stew, and the essential coffee. I mean, I live on coffee, so there's a possibility I could survive in Arctico aside from forgetting how brutally cold the winters were when I lived in eastern Washington, let alone get this close to the poles. Stop by the water tank regularly as water can regenerate doggo health as well as water your crops. There's a buildable seed terminal item to sell the yields from those crops for more funds, which can then be reinvested back into growing your base camp with additional laboratories, equipment to process materials, and of course that track that we need to get around to. Convenient foundations and grids snap together to keep a base neatly organized. Crop collection requires a silo. This can be purchased from a one-time use vendor item that's built from your recipe guide and purchased for about $1,000. Hopping on your sled and heading off in any direction aimlessly is just fine because you'll eventually come across something. Cratered areas are littered with ores and crystals. In many frozen lake areas, there will be fish that can be carved from the ice, as well as some samples marked with a test tube icon. There's also these litterings of wreckage, ships, and abandoned buildings everywhere. It's worth stopping by these sites to check for crates and blueprints. Scattered sites will have elevator for travel underground to expansive caverns for even more exploration. I thought I would mention another dog-powered adventure. A children's book called Kiana's Iditarod, which was read to me many times until I could read it myself. This story was written by a lady who finished the over 1,000-mile race herself, Shelley Gill. It gets mighty cold on the trip, down to a negative 100 wind chill. Oh, I get the shivers just thinking about this. The competition is named after a trail it traces where sled dogs were used to move materials to scattered roadhouses across Alaska as a main means of distribution to tiny towns, like Nome, where the race ends. Perhaps some are old enough to remember the cartoon Balto? That was featured after a real-life event in 1925's diphtheria epidemic. The only way for medication to reach Nome was by dog, and so it started the Great Race of Mercy. It's still happening today, and you can find race highlights around the middle of March. Let's listen to what a modern-day Iditarod is like from Dallas Seavey, a 2021 competitor, while we explore more of the game.
My family has been mushing dogs for, 55 years now, and it started with my grandfather moving to Alaska, largely because he was interested in sled dogs, and of course, the Alaskan way of life, I suppose. So that was only supposed to be a couple years that he was going to spend in Alaska, but kind of got hooked, and sled dogs have been a big part of my family's life ever since then. My dad was 4 years old when my grandpa first got sled dogs, and I was born into a kennel of mini dogs. So all of my memories are around sled dogs, and definitely my earliest memories are with sled dogs. So that has been my life, yes.
And this is one of the things where you are maybe one of the best in the world. Being a good leader for your dogs, you make them do extraordinary things for you. How do you do that?
That's a really broad question, I suppose, but it is at the heart of what we do. It's about developing a team that will do anything for you, and I wouldn't say so much make them do something for you, but make them part of the team. And whatever that team does, we do it wholeheartedly and together. I think that's very important. A sled dog is very much a pack animal. They rely on the security and the strength of a pack, and they need to feel secure in that pack. And they need to feel that if we're going to run out into a blizzard or cross a big river or go through deep snow, they're never going to be doing that alone. They're always doing it with the pack with them. Even if they're the lead dog, they know the rest of the team is right behind them and is going to help them through this. So at the core of how do you get a dog team or any dog to do what you want or to do it wholeheartedly with you, it comes down to trust. It comes down to them knowing that you're never going to ask the dog or dog team to do something that they cannot do well. And I don't mean just accomplish the task, but do it well and have fun doing it. And it's that's based on trust, and that's based on a lifetime of teaching them, this is going to be fun. We're going to do it together. And I'm never going to ask you to do something you can't do.
Can you tell us a bit more on how you build that trust? When do you start? Like, what do you do when your dog is a puppy to build that confidence?
Well, first of all, it absolutely starts as a puppy. And every interaction you have with that dog from day one, you're teaching them something. Whether or not you're consciously teaching them or whether or not you're aware that you're teaching them, they are learning from every interaction with you. So it's important that every interaction is the right kind of interaction. And as a person, you can't fake that. You have to how do I say this? You have to become the person you want to be. You can't pretend to be in a certain way or pretend to be, honest or trustworthy. You just can't do that every single day. And dogs will see through any act. So that really needs to be, I think, your personality or your character. But in the beginning, we're training Superman. That's what I tell every handler we have working there is we're training Superman. What that means is we're training this dog to be invincible, to be able to do anything. And the secret there is to show them that they can do anything and never show them anything they can't do, right? So in the beginning, I guess the human is the new thing in their environment. When they're little, they're used to, from birth, they're used to their mother and their little doghouse and their siblings. And as a person, when we come into the pen, we're the new thing that's being introduced. And by being surrounded by the things they're familiar with, it helps bridge the gap with something new. Now, when they get to be a little bit older, let's say at 4 to 5 weeks, by now they're very used to the human being in the pen or bringing the puppies with them in the house and petting them, whatever. And now it's time to start going on little walks. And I really love this transition because now when we take the puppy, usually just one, maybe two, out into the field, or we're going to go for a little hike somewhere. Obviously, with a 5-week-old puppy, we're not going very far. But it's interesting to see where now the environment is what's new and the human is the one familiar thing. And this is a major transition where we're no longer the new thing in their life. And for the rest of their life, we're going to be the thing that helps bridge the gap between the familiar and the unfamiliar. We're going to help interpret the world for these dogs. We're going to help them understand every new thing they see, whether that's a city when you're getting ready for the Iditarod, or a blizzard or a storm out in the middle of the Iditarod Trail, or some of my lead dogs go and do presentations, and they'll be on a stage in front of 3,000 people. Whatever that environment change is, I'm always the bridge. And that's where we're going to start seeing that close bond.
But if your dog has a bad experience with something, because things can happen, you never know, even though you try to avoid it, things could happen. How do you handle it?
Calmly. I think that's a really big differentiating factor in two teams. It's not what the challenge is, it's how the team handles the challenge. Things happen in life. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. Things happen when you're mushing with a team. You're going to get caught in a blizzard. But how do you handle it? I think the dogs are willing to, or any team is willing to forgive if things are done honestly and with the team's best interest in mind. So take, for example, you get into a big blizzard and maybe it's more than you can mush through. But if you look at it from the dog's point of view, they never knew that we were supposed to go through the blizzard. They never knew that we were supposed to end up at another checkpoint. That's a human mentality. That's a human understanding. What they do know is that it gets really difficult, and the musher took control and found a somewhat sheltered place for us to hunker down and wait out the storm. And yes, it's windy, and yes, it's cold, but we, as a group, made this decision, and the musher was always in control. In contrast to if the musher keeps pushing, because in our mind, we have to make it to the next checkpoint. And if ever the dogs say, I can't do what they're asking me to do, then you've just broken trust. And so you're going to end up camping in the middle of the blizzard, but it will be because the dogs couldn't make it. That's an entirely different setting. So if you're in a bad situation or something goes not how you planned, take control of it, rechart the course, and make a controlled landing rather than a crash landing, right? So I think trying to find a way to regain control of the situation and what's the best thing for this dog team right now? That's the number one question you have to ask yourself every day is, what is the next best thing I do for this team in 10 seconds, in 10 days, over the next 10 years?
Is this a common mistake for many people, that the focus is a bit wrong?
I think the most common mistake, and it's an honest mistake, is that we see things from a human perspective. Most people have spent their entire life being a human. So when we see a problem, we naturally see that problem from a human perspective. But our team is not a team of humans. Our team is a team of dogs. So they will look at the same problem very differently. So while we think we're solving the problem, or while we think it shouldn't be a problem because we can cognitively understand, that's something the team doesn't necessarily see. So again, always remember that you have to look at the problem from your dog's point of view, not your point of view. Think about if you're traveling with a dog anywhere, right? We're going to think logistically about, are we going to catch the next flight? Or do I have enough fuel to make it? Or where are we going to spend the night here? Those are not problems to your dog. All they know is I've been in the crate and I really have to pee. Or, so look at what is the problem for the dog. Also, the dog may not see any problem, but yet the human is all stressed out. And now they're starting to think, is the human or my leader, the leader of this pack, irrational? Because here they're completely stressed over something that, again, the dog sees no problem. Other times, we can cognitively understand that the next checkpoint's only 3 miles away. And okay, yes, it's been a long day, but it's not a big deal. We're almost there. But we only know that because we can see the GPS and we know the plan. The dog doesn't know the plan. The dog can't see the GPS. So you always have to be aware of, maybe they're starting to be nervous and you're not supporting them or acknowledging their concerns. So again, see the problem as your dog sees it.
How do you use your knowledge to motivate them?
I don't generally try to motivate them to do more than they should, because I don't want to push a team. That's not really the goal. The goal is to support a team. And if the team is well hydrated, well rested, and has good body fat, they're going to do well. And this comes back to a lifetime of training and teaching these dogs that every time we take off for a run, they're going to be able to make it to the next stop, and pulling hard, having a good time. They're not going to get tired on this run. And that's something you have to do with them every single day. I hate doing long runs. I almost never do long runs in races because you teach the team that they have to preserve themselves. You're not going to protect them. They have to back off. They have to decide not to pull so hard. And that's not something I ever want my team to learn. So my guys spend their entire life learning that they can lean into the harness, work hard, and I will be responsible enough to stop before they get tired. So it's not a trick to get them to work harder. No, it's just teaching them that they can always work hard and they're never going to get too tired doing that.
When you're building up a young dog, how do you start?
Slowly. I don't think there's any hurry. I've talked to a lot of different mushers and people in different dog sports, and a lot of people are very opinionated about when you start putting the harness on the dog. I think that's highly individual, and I don't think there's any hurry in my specific sport. I start out doing a lot of loose running, a lot of just puppy walks, take a litter of puppies and go walk through the forest. You're building confidence. You're building a kind of a good agility base on that dog where they're bouncing through the forest and over the weeds and tripping over each other. This is great development. I usually end up putting a harness on a dog around a year old. And again, that's a highly individual thing. Some puppies, you can put them in a team and hook up 6 puppies that have never had a harness on before, and they do great. Other groups, I will spend a lot of time doing canicross with them, getting them comfortable to the harness. Some dogs, I will put a harness on them and let them run loose next to the team and let them kind of gradually decide when they're comfortable enough to buddy up next to their brother or sister and actually kind of join the team. That's a great way to overcome the fear of being tied together and usually a loud cart or, four-wheeler behind them, or sometimes a sled that's making strange noises. They can get comfortable with those noises from a little bit of a distance. And then the first year that they're kind of in harness, between 1 and 2 years old, it's really about repetition. I don't care about really building any cardiovascular base. It's just getting out there, doing exercise, 5 days a week, up to maybe 20-mile runs, which for a long-distance sled dog is nothing, right? That's just a fun jog. The next year, between 2 and 3, they'll actually start doing some more serious training, but now their bodies are fully developed, primarily fully developed, by 2 years old. Emotionally, mentally, they're not fully developed. They're still very immature. So they're not going to try out or start training in my race team until they're 3 years old. And even as 3-year-olds, they're a rookie. I'm not relying on them. A lot of times we kind of skip that 3-year-old year and don't count on them till they're 4.
Do you care about results at all?
I think in the end, now less than I did before, absolutely. But that's personal growth. I think the point of doing any of these things is to challenge ourselves and hopefully see some personal growth. Yeah, I do think, especially in 2012, winning the Iditarod was a big goal. But over the years, I think I have learned that winning a race is an effect, not a cause. So we focus our energies on the cause. What causes you to win the Iditarod? To run a perfect race. Okay, so the goal is now to run a perfect race. How do you run a perfect race? You set up that dog team for success at every turn. You make sure that they have everything they need. They're fully supported and they're comfortable. They're relaxed. And so now the focus is really on making 10,000 absolutely perfect steps. and that creates a perfect race. So the goal is to run a perfect race. And sometimes that perfect race is 4th place, but that's the best that team could possibly do. If you do that, you're going to win races, or at least you're going to give yourself the best possible chance of winning races. I think that's the real goal. And oddly enough, this last year in the Finnmark was the first time I've ever not finished a race. And it was really a unique situation for me. Team had gotten really sick before the race. I thought they had mostly recovered prior to the race. You know, the obvious signs, the diarrhea and the vomiting had, finished by the time the race started. But they still seemed a little bit flat, I guess would be the right way to say it. And fairly quickly into the race, we realized that, this isn't going to be a good educational experience for these dogs. I started off really slow, slowed down more, took our mandatory rests really early, and eventually just pulled the plug. And looking back at it, it seems like it should be a failure, right? We didn't finish the race, but you look at it and try to pinpoint what decision did we make that was wrong. And you start looking at it from that perspective, and I think we actually did a really good job of recognizing some small signs very early, reacting appropriately, and we made the right decisions. There's nowhere in this race that I can say, oh, here was a major mistake. If anything, I think I ran a more mature race than I have in other events previously. We saw the signs earlier. We made the right decision, even though knowing that taking my 16 that early in the race meant we weren't going to be competitive. So the fact that I was doing a self-assessment, able to do that, I think I'm happy to see that I've maybe grown beyond the result orientation a little bit more, and I think it was a good race. We just didn't have a very good hand.
Yeah, this is interesting because there's a lot of people, they expect you to win this race, and it's a lot of pressure on you, and you still manage to make this decision.
That's a really important aspect you touch on there, because I've seen this happen in many Iditarod mushers. We start having expectations, and it's really important that last year is gone. Every year you wipe the slate clean. I don't care what my name is, because the dogs sure as hell don't. The dogs don't care if you're Jeff King or you're Lance Mackey or you're Dallas Seavey. The dogs are the dogs. They don't know that this is even a race. They don't know if they were first or last year. They don't care. So if I'm caring about that sort of stuff, it's not helping my team. We have to be absolutely honest about what is this team ready to do well, and really push the human expectations aside. And that can be hard to do. It's really hard when every checkpoint you have the camera in your face wanting you to say that you're going to win this race, when you're looking at a team that's not in their best interest. And my job is to watch out for these dogs. Again, I'm always going to be the bridge between these dogs and their perception and the whole world. I have to help interpret the world for this team and protect them from that and help them accomplish that, whatever that is, whether it's a 1,000-mile race or a walk in the park. So it can be challenging to kind of push all that other stuff aside and not let it affect your decisions.
While you're out, look for fishing spots both above and below the ice. Your convenient kayak will spawn as soon as you wade into the frigid waters, allowing you to paddle out to buoys that are marked with little fishies on the map. Once you've floated over a fish-populated area, a hook icon will spawn, and you will have to spam a bit when the fish bites. This is an excellent way to pick up fuel for yourself and your dogs. If you have excess, it can be sold off for base camp funds. There's a fast travel to port back to your base immediately, which can be advantageous when trying to grab energy from the solar panel right before the last hours of daylight. You can opt to run around processing hardware all night. The game will not force you to sleep and will regenerate materials as soon as it rolls into the next day. Just remember to check your own hunger level occasionally. It's fairly occasionally too. The game certainly doesn't feel at all strenuous to explore, though at this point falls into the chill category. For that reason, really enjoying the game so far. The graphics are low poly and it's charming, the colors are beautiful, makes it very cheery vibe while still being relaxing to steer the dogs around on auto run while scanning for silhouettes on the horizon of potential sites that you've not yet scouted. I'm a fan of the old Oregon Trail. I just played through about every version ever made throughout the years. This would be an elaboration on the old Yukon Trail spin-off, only you're mining for data instead of gold, but I think those are almost the same thing in a modern day age. Did anybody else play that game as a kid? A little mini review here for those who missed it because it's, well, ancient. Originally released in 1994 by MECC, or maybe it's just MEC run together, this was another way to capitalize on the history of greed. All about the gold rush of the Klondike, and we set sail from Seattle after finding a partner and buying some supplies. There's the usual historic marker descriptions and stopping off at towns along the way. There's some activities like games, and you can learn helpful tips from locals. After continuing along the trail, you'll eventually be rafting your way down some rapids in a boat that you built. At Dawson City, you can stake your claim and start your gold digging. Hopefully you make at least enough gold to make it home. A few finer points. This is how data is obtained, is by taking the samples drilled from the ice during exploration and processed through a craftable laboratory. Just drop some samples and let them process on a timer. Another item which can be crafted to help provide automation is the hardware accelerator that is set it and forget it mode. Given I'm fairly early on in the game, I don't have a ton to show you, but eventually I'll do a guide on all the uses for the crafted items in the game. There isn't a ton of information out there on this little indie development, and there could be so much more I haven't tripped across yet in the game. Some online estimates put it at 4-hour completion, but I'm already at 6 hours, and there's still a ton of ground that I haven't discovered yet, let alone had much opportunity to build everything that could be envisioned. Granted, I am one of those people who likes to take their time and explore rather than gun for finishing objectives as fast as possible. You will have to let me know how long it's been taking you all. So far so good. Giving this game a 7 out of 10 in its current development state as of summer 2021. The game is on early access on Steam and available for the bargain price of $9.99. It's on sale currently for $3.99. This game is quite a bit of entertainment for less than the price of a macchiato. It's a fairly intuitive and relaxing adventure, plus for being dog-powered. It seems to be stuck in a perpetual state of early access, but it's still quite a bit of a game to play with. Get a base camp started, never know what might be coming in the future, and we'll pull you back into the game occasionally. I think it's one worth checking out in every major update. There's a lot of potential here. What do you think? Have you played Arctico or something similar? I'm looking for more independent development games to try out. Suggestions are welcome in the comment. I do game reviews, quite a bit of farming crafting simulators, as well as racing simulators on the channel, while tossing in some different sciences as a bonus for fun. We get to learn and explore virtual worlds while musing more about the real world we live in too. Sharing is caring, and science is fun, so please share the knowledge with the community. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye!